Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. I hope you're well today. Today we're going to be briefly tackling the question, is Myers-Briggs like astrology? Is the Enneagram like astrology? And because these questions seem to still exist in the community, and it would be good to dispel them once and for all. Before I do this, I need to remind you that I've written a book on the INFJ type, the Ecstatic Soul. Look at this very lovely cover. It's available for less than $10 at all the Amazon links to all the different countries in the description box below. Paperback or ebook format, you have any questions, you let me know. It's the most in-depth investigation of the INFJ you can find currently. So if you think your knowledge of the INFJ is good, that you're struggling to find new material to learn more about the INFJ, and you want to move to the next level, this is pretty much the only book you can get. So I recommend you give it a chance. And you help me too, of course. So, it's funny how astrology keeps coming back to the discussion when people are having chats about MBTI or about things like Enneagram, socionics as well, and other things. You obviously have people who, if you like, people who dismiss personality theory in principle. Most of the time it's because they have not really looked into it, and because it seems to be a bit of a trend to just dismiss it without giving it proper thought. To me, this is a typical example of behavior that I will call narrow-mindedness, in the sense in which I discussed it recently in a video, which I said it was one of the most hated traits of INFJs. INFJs are bound, they're condemned to be open. You know what Jean-Paul Sartre once said, human beings are condemned to be free. And what I would say, I would adapt that statement somewhat and say INFJs are condemned to be open. It's not a choice. And that's why INFJs will give a chance to everything. They will at least give a chance to pretty much everything. It can be a problem in interpersonal relationships because they will also give a chance to narcissists and sociopaths, and that's not good for them. But leaving that point aside, condemned to be open to what astrology has to say, open to what Myers-Briggs has to say, to what Enneagram has to say, socionics, and really anything that purports to give explanations about stuff. But there is, within the community of those who have enough openness to know that Myers-Briggs actually has some very useful things to contribute to self-development and the study of personality, and it's rooted in the work of Carl Jung, which itself is criticizable, but still, I think, full of interesting and useful insights. You have people who seem to like to say, well, MBTI, it's based on Jung, there's a good solid background, we know where it's from, has a good origin. It's not like Enneagram. Enneagram, if you look at the vocabulary in which the different types are described, and the kind of slightly spiritual / esoteric / sort of mysterious origins of the theory itself, it's not as precise. It doesn't do anything that MBTI can't do. So it's really more like astrology. It's a bit saddening in a way to see that the similar kind of attitude of people who don't know a lot about Myers-Briggs, is replicated in the attitude of people who know a lot of Myers-Briggs but don't know a lot about Enneagram, for example. Because it seems systematically to be the case that this particular viewpoint is embraced not necessarily by people who are narrow-minded in essence, but by people who have not yet taken the time to look into the Enneagram model of personality. It's a very different model. But I think that anyone who's looked into it in detail will just have to admit that Enneagram is just very useful. It allows you to tell the difference, or to encapsulate differences between 20 different types of INFJs. INFJs 4 with a 3 wing, 4 with a 5 wing, 2 with a 1 wing, 2 with a 3 wing. People who know about Enneagram know that these types of INFJs are quite different. And you look at the instinctual variance, sexual, social, self-protection, type 9 with a 1 wing, type 9 with a 8 wing, type 5 with a 6 wing, type 6 with a 5 wing, as I'm currently embracing for myself. There's a lot of different types of INFJs, and the fact that we're able to determine these INFJs as being distinct from each other with the help of something that's not MBTI is proof that MBTI could not perform this operation. It can be performed by Enneagram, so why the hell not use it if it's complementary? Now, the argument that it's, not of the same origin, and that its origin, unlike being the originally in the work of the very prestigious name of Carl Jung, well, I think there's two things to say here. First of all, Carl Jung is very much a respected figure in your eyes. It's a revered figure in your eyes, and so you think it constitutes some kind of authority. Arguments from authority are always a little bit dangerous because it doesn't rely on rationality, just on the name of someone and on the credentials the person brings. Credentials are important to an extent, but it's always important also to not give them too much credence, too much importance. In fact, if you go beyond the circle of people who are into personality and who revered Carl Jung for that reason, you'll start noticing that in the psychological field, for example, throughout the 20th century, a lot of people have said that Carl Jung's work has theories in it that are crazy, just as crazy as astrology would be. So a lot of people think the collective unconscious is insane, and that the archetypes are kind of an interesting theory, but don't have anything corresponding in reality, impossible to prove, and so not scientific. So they look at Carl Jung through a perspective that is not our perspective, because we all love Carl Jung. We are children of Carl Jung by our very practice and our very interests. It's not the case of the entire 20th century community, academic, scientific, or whatever you like. So always keep this in perspective. If you take a theory on its own merits rather than looking at the authority that it has in its original sources, you can start appreciating Enneagram for what it is. And I just want to finish by emphasizing that there's a big criterion of demarcation which makes Enneagram and Myers-Briggs a certain type of theory, and astrology, first of all, let's be charitable and call it a theory, but it's definitely not the same type of theory. There's a line of demarcation that places two on one side and the other definitely on the other side. And I'm making this point because I was discussing personality database recently, and the point was made that astrology could be there, could be inserted, could be included, because socionics are there, Enneagram is there, Myers-Briggs, and there's lots of really old, outdated theories of temperaments. So why not astrology? Why is it not included? Because astrology is on the other side of the line of demarcation. What is this line of demarcation? It's what we could call empirical evidence, the empirical line of demarcation. All of the theories that are included on personality database, and that includes Enneagram and Myers-Briggs, are empirical theories at least, which means that you get to a result, you get to a projection or of a person's personality type. You develop an opinion, and then you can defend your opinion by argument, relying on your observations, by empirical observations, by looking at what they're like. With astrology, that's not how it works. All you have to do is look at their date of birth, and then in dubiously scientific fashion, to justify the range of the person's behavior, temperaments, opinions, and everything, in light of the date of birth that fixes the zodiac sign to start with. So it's not an argument as much as it is an appeal, as much as it is something that is known in advance, and you're basically somewhat like an attorney would be, rather than what a philosopher would do, not knowing the answer in advance, looking for the empirical evidence and getting to a type, and then discussing it with people who might have seen other things and collected different bits of evidence. In the case of astrology, you start with the truth, quote unquote, and then you look at all the evidence as confirming that the evidence is aligned with the date of birth and what the date of birth says. So it doesn't start with the evidence. It doesn't start with observations. The observations are only used as confirmation. Whereas in the case of Enneagram and in the case of Myers-Briggs, it starts with evidence and observation, and you cannot take anything away from that. So, not astrology. Astrology is a totally different category. It's useful for some people. Some people use it as a means of self-exploration, self-development. Very good for them. I'm not going to be bashing astrology in this video, but I just wanted to drive home the point that there is a fundamental criterion of demarcation that always needs to be remembered. The criterion of empiricity. Now, if you enjoyed this video, consider giving me a like, subscribing, commenting, and I'll see you soon, guys. Bye-bye.